Welcome. I'm Kristen, and this is the Simple Handmade Everyday Podcast, where I talk about living a creative, intentional life. I like to chat about quilting, knitting, what I'm reading and watching, and even a little bit about keeping a cozy, organized home. You can find me online at my blog, Simple Handmade Everyday at KristenEsser.com, or on Instagram at KristenEsser. I've got my cup of tea in hand, so let's settle in for a chat. Welcome to episode 10. I am so happy to be here. I'm a bit off my schedule here in the summer, but that's the way things go for us parents, isn't it? So no problem there. But I am back in the master bedroom closet recording studio because everyone's home in the summer a lot. And I have 3 gigantic children. I have full men's-sized boys who are back to sharing a room and sharing bunk beds, and I just think of it as being really good practice for college dorm living. But we got my daughter Chloe moved back home from school, and it's great to have all the kids all under one roof. So that's been wonderful. But it is an adjustment. I will tell you that. It is an adjustment to having a house full of people again when I'm kind of used to having the house to myself during the day. I work from home. I sew from home, obviously. And I'm used to having some time to myself, and that just doesn't exist right now. But all good. It's just, those seasonal changes. So, I haven't mentioned that I've got my cup of tea, even though, frankly, it is 1,000,000 degrees in the closet here. I still have my tea because I needed the caffeine boost, to be honest with you, and I'm excited about this tea. It is a little different than what I usually do. I'm drinking a matcha green tea latte. So I'm a total latte lover. But this is a little bit different. So matcha green tea is a dried tea. So you usually the whole leaf. So I guess it's actually even better for you. And if you don't like the kind of grassy green tea taste, then you're probably not going to love this. But I don't mind that. So you can actually buy it from Trader Joe's. You can buy it online, and I think I've got one sitting in my Amazon cart right now. But it's a little expensive. It was $15 or $20 for this kind of a big bag. Well, maybe it's not a big bag. It's like an ounce, but you only use a teaspoon at a time. So that's in my Amazon cart. But you can get little single serving packets from Trader Joe's. So that's how I started. And you do this thing where I mix cashew milk is my favorite, almond milk or cashew milk. But Trader Joe's has a mixture of cashew, almond, macadamia milk that's really good. So I do like 6 ounces of that, 6 ounces of water, heat it up, and then add the green tea and a little sweetener and a little bit of coconut oil and a smidge of salt, which sounds weird, but it really helps with the sweetness thing. And then I kind of blend it up with an immersion blender. It sounds like it's a lot of trouble, but it's really not. And I really like how this matcha green tea has some caffeine, but it's kind of like a gentle caffeine high. It doesn't make me jittery or anything like that. So I'm enjoying that for now. Welcome back if you're a returning listener, and welcome if this is your first time. Sit down, make yourself a little something to drink, and let's have a chat. I do want to give a little bit of a shout out to a couple people who reviewed the podcast. Yay! So thank you to MK3 Boys, who says that it's her favorite podcast. So love you. Thank you so much. And another one from a fellow quilter who says that she feels like she's got a new friend, and right back at you. So thank you so much. Again, these reviews really help other people find the podcast and help iTunes to know that we're relevant, things like that. So I really appreciate reviews. And there's also been quite a few new ratings. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. While we're talking about summer, I kind of love the transition between seasons because I feel like it's a bit of a place to start over and to recalibrate, and especially the transition from spring to summer because we've got the end of school, and for a lot of people, summer is a very different time. And with very different set of schedules and expectations. So I sat down one day with a journal and just basically tried to think about what I wanted to get done this summer. And I looked at it from the perspective of when we get to September and I look back on this summer, what can I do that will make me feel that it was a summer well spent, that it was a successful summer? And I've sat down with my kids and tried to get them to do a similar little exercise, because we can just kind of fritter away these days, these beautiful, giftful days. And I want to make sure that we didn't do that. Every year since the kids were little, we've always made sort of a summer bucket list. And when they were really little, when I was just a stay-at-home mom, we did all these theme days. We had Pirate Day and Harry Potter Day and Board Game Day, and we're like on Harry Potter Day, they would dress up. We would make food. We'd make pretend butterbeer. They would reenact scenes. We'd watch the movie in the afternoon, that kind of thing. Pirate Day, it was always around dress up. It always had the components of dressing up and making food and probably putting on a play. I was lamenting the other day that the days of Pirate Day were gone, but we still do sometimes even have something like a board game day or art day, where we just drag out all the art stuff and sketch and stuff. So those are kind of fun. Even with older kids, I enjoy having those kind of theme days. It makes it feel special. We obviously in the summer we try to get to the beach, but our vacation's all at the beach this year, so we almost kind of don't need to worry about getting to the beach. That will take care of itself. But I also like to get them over to a museum at least once, which takes a lot of coercion on my side, I will admit, but nobody ever regrets going to the museum. And of course, I bribe them with, we'll have lunch out and we'll stop for frozen yogurt on the way home, and that kind of a thing. So anyways, as I sat down, I made this list, and I have to admit that I got a little overwhelmed. I'm like, you're trying to cram too much into a season that's supposed to feel a little bit more laid back. And I will admit that I don't quite have it all worked out yet. It's still a work in progress, but I am actually taking the opportunity to get up a little earlier and spend some time writing every morning, which has really taken a backseat lately. I really enjoy my blog. I really enjoy writing, and it's one of those things that really very easily gets pushed off to the side for no good reason. So that's felt really good to kind of do that. And it's that little things add up to big things kind of mentality that, if you just sit down for an hour and a half a day, by the end of the week, it really, amounts to a decent amount of writing. And I'm trying to employ that same mindset, which honestly, I really struggle with, being an all or nothing personality. But I'm trying to carve out time after lunch, because I want to get up. I have like a devotional time. I exercise. I do my writing, and then I actually have to work my paid job, and that all takes me pretty much till noon, which is totally fine. I mean, that's a pretty cushy schedule. I'm not complaining. But then after lunch, I wanted to make sure that I was making use of those hours too. And it's hard for me because my energy kind of really tanks in the afternoon. And that's really when I just want to take it easy and sew or knit, or frankly, I can get a little lost on social media, which I'm really putting the kibosh on this summer, as I want to stay off social media as much as possible because I want to use my time better. But I have carved out little 15-minute sections of things that I want to make progress on. 15 minutes of deep cleaning. Like today, that was just getting out into the garage where we dumped all of Chloe's stuff when we moved her back in, because we could not move her into her bedroom because Jonah woke up the day before high school graduation with the stomach flu. And it was so concerning that he wasn't going to be able to go to graduation, that Ben was going to have the stomach flu during finals, that my husband or I would have the stomach flu when we're supposed to be watching Jonah graduate. But luckily, none of that happened. He got better. Graduation happened. Nobody got sick. It was all good. But we had him quarantined off with virtual police tape. Don't go in this room. Don't go in this bathroom. Do not look at him. Do not go near him. And it worked. So yay. So anyways, it has taken some time to get her moved back into her bedroom, and, all the stuff that just stays packed up that you need in a dorm or an apartment, but you don't need at home, put away. So, I need to circle back around to the kitchen and just put in 15 minutes cleaning out the refrigerator, cleaning out the pantry, getting to lining those drawers with cork that I've started 2 months ago and haven't finished. But I want to just take small steps every day towards those goals. And I want to just spend like 15 minutes outside. I think I need to do this in the evening because my morning's already packed. And just do some like 15 minutes of weeding and deadheading in the garden so that when we get to the weekend and, we've got the time to dig in, excuse the pun, to our gardening endeavors a little bit more, that I don't have to waste that time with the weeding. I just kind of want that to be done, and then we can just start digging up plants or mulching or doing whatever we need to do. I say that I want to just have these little 15 minutes of this and 15 minutes of that, but I find it hard. But that is my goal. It is, what day of the week is it? I think it's Wednesday. I have not been out and weeded the garden once this week. So maybe I should just say, it's a goal to do it every day, but if I hit, 4 days a week, I'm doing good. That's kind of what I'm thinking about this summer. One thing that kind of took this thinking in a different direction is I discovered this podcast called The Lazy Genius. I follow her on Instagram, but I had never listened to her podcast. And if you look at the reviews, it says these things like, "Thank you for helping me sort through the minutia of life so that I can do things better." It's a lot about people talking about how she really helps you sort through the minutia. It's called The Lazy Genius because she wants you to be a genius about things that matter and lazy about things that don't. So it's totally about intentional living, and I'm all about that. But I listened to a podcast on my walk the other day, and she has a whole series. It's actually started in May, and I haven't gotten through it all, but it's all about thinking about your summer and being intentional about how you want to spend your summer. So we were thinking very much the same thing. But she had this idea that your sort of theme or watchword for the summer is connection. And I loved that. Really, what you want to do is connect with your family. People are around, and it's a time that you can really do that. And you want to do it in a way that doesn't drive you crazy. So if you've got little kids, I know a lot of people are very concerned about, my kids are going to be home, they're going to be fighting, we're going to run out of things to do, they're going to be bored. I never really worried about that when they were little. I loved having them home. But I get that it can be a lot, especially if you're used to having some hours of the day to yourself. But I love that idea of connection and thinking that is really the best way that you can spend your summer. Even if you don't, or I should say I don't, get the garage cleaned out and the under the stairs closet cleaned out and all these, things that I want to do. Even if they don't happen, what I need to prioritize are coffee dates with Chloe. We do this thing where we go to coffee houses together, each with our laptop, and we sit and rewrite. We actually hardly interact, but somehow we both just love being together doing the same activity. And I've done geocaching with the boys. There's just hiking, going for bike rides, things like that. Just, really fostering connection, because let me tell you, with one kid, 20, one 18, and one 15, time's ticking down, man, and I am very aware of it, and I just want to make sure that I make use of this time that all three of them are here to connect with them as a group and connect with them individually. Enough about summer schedules. Let's get to the quilting, shall we? What is on my cutting table? That is a really good question. I think the most important thing that I'm working on right now is the Moda Bake Shop is having a summer quilt along. It's a mystery quilt. I've never done a mystery quilt before. I am one of the chefs or camp counselors, as they're calling them. The theme is choose your own adventure. So there's a whole sort of camp theme. It's very cute. And so the way it works is it's a medallion style quilt. That much has been revealed. So there will be a center block, and there's two choices for the center block. And then as we do the borders, the pieced quilt block borders that go around the quilt, there will be 2 choices on every round. So I think that's pretty cool because, one block may not be to your taste, or maybe you've never done a certain kind of block and you want it to be a skill builder, or just it makes your quilt very unique. So the fabric requirements are up. Oh, by the way, everything that I talk about on this podcast, I put links in the show notes. So never worry about having to jot anything down. It's all right over there for you. So, but the fabric requirements are up at the Moda Bake Shop, and it's like 22 fat quarters or 2 layer cakes plus some background fabric is all you really need to get started. And who knows? You might have this kind of stuff laying around. Holly Ann over at String and Story is doing a whole summer stash busting, challenge on her blog to sew our stashes. So I know she's actually pulled from her stash. This will take up 22 fat quarters. That could put a pretty good dent in a stash. Or you may have layer cakes or a combination of kind of pre-cuts laying around that you could use. So I'm really excited about that. I've already shown the fabric that I'm using on Instagram. I don't think I've done a blog post yet, but I'm using the Moda Color Cuts. This is a new product from Moda where they've taken 12 fabrics from different lines, from different designers, and put them together by colorway. So there's a blue one, it's kind of an aqua blue, and it's cool because they're from different designers, they're not all the same shade. So it gives you a nice, variety of colors that make a quilt a little bit more interesting than if everything was exactly the same shade of aqua. So I'm doing a aqua, which is called Beach Glass, and gray, which is called Road Trip, and then a white background. So I want to call it a 2-color quilt because I think of it as 2 colors, but it's really 3 because there's a background color. And I'm really excited about it. They're very pretty. Once I got them in my hands, I will admit there are more directional fabrics in there than I realized. And, directional fabrics can be tricky to work with, but everything's really cute. So I'm excited about that. I'm trying to think of what other colors there are. I know there's a red one because that was going to be my second choice, like a red, gray, and white quilt I think would be pretty stunning. And I'm pretty sure there's like a yellow one too, and a green. So anyway, there's lots of choices there. So I encourage you to sew along. I will be posting probably weekly with my progress. And so just come and join this adventure with us. The other kind of quilt along that I'm thinking about doing, and I have not quite jumped on the bandwagon yet, is the Splendid Sampler 2. Now, I don't know about you, but I think I did make the first couple blocks for the Splendid Sampler that was from a few years ago and sort of quickly lost momentum on that. I loved how it came out. I loved looking at other people's, but I didn't do it. But I don't know. I kind of like this idea of somebody else designing my quilts this summer and just having kind of a low pressure sew along. And so I'm thinking about that. I did pull out, I have a fat quarter bundle of Lori Holt's Bee Basics. That's basically a rainbow. And I've pulled that out thinking maybe that could be my fabric pull for the Splendid Sampler. It would be a really good way for me to use up, that fat quarter bundle. I feel a little guilty because I have a bunch of loose Lori Holt fabric too, Bee Lori or whatever she's called, that I probably could pull from as well. So I don't know. So I'm thinking about the Splendid Sampler. Let me know if you're doing either the Moda Bake Shop Quilt Along or the Splendid Sampler, and so that I can kind of follow your progress as well. In addition to those goals, I still have my quilts for cure and my pineapple quilt that need to be quilted that I've been really procrastinating on. So I don't know what's up with that, but I just really need to do that. Part of the reason, are you this way? I wanted to get back to sewing on my Juki, doing the piecing on my Juki, because I finally got, how do I explain this? It's one of those little It's a piece of metal that you can screw into the bed of the Juki that acts as a seam guide. And I'm one of those people, I'm very picky about my 1/4-inch seam, and I will usually do a little stack of painter's tape so that I can just run my fabric along that, so I'm, very accurate. I don't have a lot of luck with the 1/4-inch feet. I need more guidance than that. And so I've got this little contraption now on my Juki, and I love it, and it's helping me get a very good 1/4-inch seam. And what I hate to do is then break that all down to make it into a free motion quilting setup. So for a while I actually still do have my baby lock set up, but I just really like sewing out my Juki better. So that's part of the reason I haven't been quilting, is because it takes, let's be honest, 2 minutes to tear apart and reconfigure the sewing thing. It's ridiculous. It's like not flossing or something. It's like it takes 2 minutes out of your life. Just do it. But to be honest, that's what's going on there. And the last thing that I don't know if I'll get to this, but what I really want to do, if I don't get to it this summer, I will make it a fall goal, is I want to get over to the shop and rent long arm time. I took class actually, a year or so ago, and I've only been back once to long arm, and I want to do it. I want to get good at it, and the only way to do that is to fork over the money and the time to drive down there to do that. So I need to make time and space in my schedule for that. And as I'm saying this out loud, I'm realizing, Kristen, this is not going to happen this summer. So right now, I'm just going to compartmentalize and say, you know what? That's for the fall. Okay, so let's move on to knitting. There is embarrassingly little to discuss about knitting. I haven't really been knitting. I don't know why, but I know next month when we go to the beach for 10 days, I totally will knit. So I'm a bit of a fail on the Knitting for Norway thing. I still have 3 projects I think I can get done. So I just, which are socks, mittens, and finishing a sweater, and that is it. So let's just set that aside and call it a bit of a knitting fail for this podcast. I may not be knitting, but I have been reading, and that makes me really happy. So what do I have here? First of all, I want to mention, in the spirit of books, have you listened to the Quilt Fiction podcast? So that is the brainchild of Frances Dowell from the Off-Kilter Quilt fame, Birds in the Air, Margaret Goes Modern. These are 2 other quilt fiction books that she's done. So she's written another one called Friendship Album 1933. And she is releasing it sort of as she's writing it. She actually hasn't finished the book, which I think is totally cool and terrifying. But she is releasing it as a weekly podcast, a few chapters at a time, and she's reading it. She has a beautiful voice. I'm sure if you listen to her podcast, I could listen to the woman talk all day long. And it's charming. It's about a quilting group in the Depression era, where they're all going to be entering the what's it called, the Sears Quilting Contest for their, different motivations, different reasons, and I'm totally loving it. So, if you need something else to listen to, totally listen to that. In terms of other books, the most recent book that I finished was called Forever Summer. There is a quilting and reading podcast called The Sampler Girl Knits and Reads, I think it is. It used to be an audio podcast, and now it's a YouTube, visual. They still call them podcasts, but you can see it's a video. And she's doing a little summer book club where she is giving 2 options of books to read. You can read either one or both. I chose Forever Summer because the other one sounded really good. I can't remember what it was, but it's a current book, and I couldn't get it. I was like number 25th on the list of the library. So I went with Forever Summer, and off the top of my head, I can't remember who wrote it, but it was a totally fun read. I was thinking how fun it would have been at the beach, because it was a pretty light read, but not... not stupid, you know what I mean? So it's about 2 women who sort of get thrown together based on the results of a DNA test, like think Ancestry.com or 23andMe. And when you do those tests and you enter information online, people can contact you and say, like we're related, kind of a thing. And this actually happened to a friend of mine who took this test because her sister-in-law said, you should do this, and then entered some information online. Number one, the test revealed that what she'd been told about her ethnicity her whole life was not correct. And then somebody contacted her that she was related to that she had no idea about. So it created a whole thing that she's actually going to write a book about one day. It's a crazy story. But this is kind of a similar thing. DNA tests revealed some things that people did not expect. People get thrown together. Shenanigans ensue. But a lot of the summer, the book takes place, it's over a summer in, I've already forgotten. I want to say Rhode Island. It's like a beach house. And so it's like one of those places. I feel like now that I'm saying it, it could be Maine. I pictured Maine. There are lobster rolls, but it was great. It was like, it took place at this kind of like a bed and breakfast or an inn at the beach. The kind of place, like I can picture it perfectly in my head, and I wish I could just go visit there. And the kind of place that you sort of never want to leave. And so, anyways, it was a great story about these two women and how their lives overlapped and all the things that happened as a result of this test. So I completely recommend that. And I'm now reading a book called The Punishment She Deserves. It's by Elizabeth George, who I'm a little surprised that I don't know about. She sounds a little familiar, but she's a mystery writer. This is apparently her 22nd book. So if I like it, I love it when I discover a new author and I can go back and read everything, that they've written. But the jury's still out. We're not ready to recommend that yet. But I did get back onto Goodreads. Are you on Goodreads? I signed up years ago and then just never did anything with it. Whenever someone sort of friended me on it, I'm like, well, I'm going to be the greatest disappointment to you. But my method of keeping track of books that I want to read by putting them on my Amazon wish list is not a good thing to do, because then when Christmas comes, like I have to go move all those off because I don't really want to buy them. I'm very picky about buying books. I kind of only buy nonfiction books now, because I just get everything else at the library. I'm out of space in my house, and I do buy some ebooks. But so here's what was kind of cool. I moved my want to read list over to Goodreads, and then I started getting emails from Goodreads telling me, like, this book is $2.99 on Kindle right now. This book is 99 cents on Kindle right now. So I ended up buying some books all on Kindle so that when we go to the beach, I have a lot of things to read. And one of here's my list. I've heard really good things about the book by Lauren Graham called Talking as Fast as I Can. I did read her fiction book. She's Lorelai Gilmore, and it was actually quite good. And I've heard that you have a new appreciation for Gilmore Girls, which is one of my all-time favorite shows, after reading Talking as Fast as I Can. What else? The Beach Street Knitting Society is another book that I've been meaning to read for a long time, and it turned out to be like $1.99. And another, it's called The Double Wedding Ring Mystery. That's by Claire, I want to say O'Donoghue. And she writes this kind of quilty fiction mysteries that I get a kick out of. And again, it was so cheap. It's been on my Amazon wish list for probably 3 years. And another book called This Is How It Always Is, which was recommended by Modern Mrs. Darcy, who is sort of my book guru. And I can't even remember what that is about right now, but she said it's one of the best books she's read in the last 5 years, and that is saying something from a woman who reads hundreds of books a year. So I got that, and again, I think it was $2.99. So it's kind of a fun little side thing that Goodreads will now tell me, like send me an email and say, hey, you might want to check these things out. If you are so inclined, if you're on Goodreads, send a friend request or however that works, and we can hook up in that way. Well, I usually wrap up the podcast with a little talk about homemaking, but I sort of stole my thunder by talking about the whole summer routine thing at the beginning of the podcast. Making a list and a schedule and adjusting expectations. So I do definitely have some goals. I want to do stuff with the kids this summer. I want to write more. I want to get some deep cleaning done. and enjoy my outdoor living space in the garden, spend as much time outside as possible, and just sort of really embrace this change of season. Now, if you are in Australia, which I know I definitely have some Australian listeners, or if you are in the Southern Hemisphere, I'm sorry about all of this talk about summer, but it's the same thing for winter, isn't it? It's that kind of opposite thing. Instead of wanting to be outside as much as possible, it's about bringing it all in and being homey and what's that word? Hygge. I love the whole concept of that, but I have a hard time saying the word. But, switching over from the summer of salads and things like that to stews and soups and lighting candles and lighting fires and being inside. It's the whole transition I find great. What's the saying? A change is as good as a rest. Just doing something different to mark the changing seasons. I find so fun. It's like having a blank sheet of paper in front of you. My best friend growing up, her dad had this saying, this thing that he would say to her, and I have in turn said it to my kids. On the first day of summer, he would say, "Okay, stop right now. The whole summer is ahead of you. You haven't spent a single day of it. Like, just enjoy this moment and really relish it and think about what's the best way that I can spend this summer." And so we kind of did that on Monday once we got through all the crazy graduation parties, Father's Day, all that kind of stuff. Said, okay, your whole summer's in front of you. Spend it well. And with that, I'm going to wrap up this podcast. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I hope you got to spend it doing something that you love, like some knitting or handwork, or I don't know, even just driving around with a good iced tea in your hand. But I very much appreciate you as listeners, and I'll see you next time.